Are you ready for the hot seat?
My next guest has helped companies over the last few decades rethink the way they think about returns, not just as an operational challenge, but as a business strategy. With me in the hot seat right now, Tony Sciarrotta, global leader and consultant in reverse logistics. Tony, welcome to the hot seat.
Spencer, thank you so much. I love that introduction. I've done a few podcasts and presentations in my time, but I've never been on an actual hot seat. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Well, based on reputation, I think you might be able to take the heat, but we're going to find out for sure here pretty quick. But before we do that, why don't you just take 20 seconds and give us a little bit of about your background?
My background, I'm a Detroit-born, diehard Michigander, and I started out life as a happy-go-lucky sales and marketing guy with companies like Sony and Philips. And one day, Philips had a consultant pick my name out of a hat and say, "This is the guy you should make director of returns management to go fix the returns problem," which I didn't even know anything about back in 1997. That's the short version.
The short version, and since then you become quite the subject matter expert on that, and that's what we're talking about today. So let's talk about this. I mean, even without reverse logistics, just the supply chain is such a puzzle to solve. But I want to help guide this discussion. Can you provide us a little bit of a backdrop? What is the economic problem associated with reverse logistics?
Well, the economic problem, and by the way, I don't come from the supply chain world. Maybe that's to my credit. I don't come from the credit world as some do. And I'm disappointed that there's no C-suite positions for returns management. And so it gets lost in many companies who owns the responsibility. But the economic impact is that on average, for example, forward supply chain has maybe 7 touch points before the consumer gets it in their home. In reverse logistics, the average is 2 to 3 times the number of touch points because it might be going back to a return center. It might be going back from a return center to the manufacturer, from the manufacturer to the refurbisher, to the repair center, to the reseller, to the packaging experts, and on and on and on. So reverse logistics economically is a nightmare because of the massive amount of extra touch points. That's the simplest, shortest way to say it, Spencer.
I think one of, a light bulb moment for me in terms of appreciating the economic problem of reverse logistics. My wife has what they call an addiction to Amazon, and these packages come to my house. It's like they say, "Alexa, bring me this thing," and then it just shows up magically at the doorstep. And then one day I was asking her, like, "Well, you're not going to use that. What are you going to do with it?" She's like, "Well," I said, "Are you going to return it?" She's like, "No." I asked them about it, and they just said, "Just keep it," because
oh my God, right, the new business model.
Because it was so expensive for them to try to manage the returns, and I'm like, wow, there is a gold mine somewhere if somebody figures out around this thing. So anyhow, let's talk about the scope of that. I mean, as you expand that out of from one delivery to, hundreds of retailers, global landscape, how big is this problem to solve?
Well, the last numbers we've been seeing is the NRF collects some forecasts for the United States alone at about 850 to 890 billion.
Wow.
Billion. Let me stop there for a second. That's just the United States. Europe does a better job of keeping metrics and tracking, and Europe has reported somewhere north of 700 billion in returns. So that's 2 continents representing over $1.5 trillion in returns products. Now, we are talking retail value, and we are talking about some of that may go back on the shelf as new goods, right? So let's not terrify people, because also there are no industry partners or after sales companies who are billions and billions of dollars who are handling all this stuff. It's got those extra touch points. So it's hard to quantify. And that, again, is also just B2C returns.
Yeah.
not even B2B. So let's just call this a $2 to $3 trillion industry globally when you convey all of the B2B, B2C, and all of the movement that goes on with returns.
Yeah. I read a book one time, and I think it was called Door to Door. Probably came out like in 2016, 2017, and it described the modern world of logistics as the eighth wonder of the world. The fact that you can, think of something and then, create it, like a coffee cup in Colombia, then you get it packaged in Russia, and then it shows up in like in a little small container. It really is remarkable about how advanced we are from a logistics standpoint. What is it about reverse logistics that has stumped some of the greatest innovators, within logistics planning, and just some of the expertise in this space?
What I usually do on stage, Spencer, is I do a little visual aid, a little visual assistance where I show a truckload of returns and a truckload of goods going forward. You can probably visualize that yourself real easily. The forward, nice pallets, shrink wrapped, all same size cartons, same size packages, loads nicely. Now think about opening the doors on 26 pallets of reverse logistics. It looks like garbage. It's 26 Gaylords stuffed with all mix and manner of products, maybe not even two of the same in a Gaylord. So that alone explains how the reverse logistics puzzle is its own nightmare. And no one can figure out, how do you take a Gaylord of potentially 50 to 100 different items and handle it very efficiently versus shipping hundreds of forward packages, nice and neat, and filling up a truckload. That picture alone should do enough for people. And again, that's what brings it into the logistics world. And I would argue that it doesn't belong there. It belongs somewhere else, responsibility-wise.
Interesting. So, over 10 years, going back to 2013, you've done a significant work as a consultant, and also as executive director of the Reverse Logistics Association.
Right.
Well, describe some of the work. What were some of the things that you were tackling in that role, and what were some of the successes that kind of helped us move along in this space?
Well, I do want to point out, you suggested 2013. I'm going to go back just a little further than that. Let's call it before the age of internet. Not quite internet, but the age of the pandemic internet. Let's throw that in. The brick and mortar retailers average 6 to 7% return rates. Okay, and we estimate it was a couple $100 million around 2005, 2006. Flash forward, internet starts to pick up a little bit, 5, 10, 15% of sales. Returns start going up. You get to 2026, 2025, 2024, you're pushing, as we said, 16 to 18% return rates. But keep in mind, that's everything. That's still counting brick and mortar, who are still running at about 7%. So that tells you that return rates for e-commerce exploded. Right. We're talking easily 25%, with some product categories like garments, apparel, and so on, going as high as 40 to 50%. So we had to address this world somehow, some way. And the Reverse Logistics Association was attempting to be a global voice for the industry, representing the retailers and the manufacturers, as we say, the people who make the stuff and sell the stuff needing help, and the industry partners who help them, whether it's trucking companies moving it, whether it's refurbishers fixing it up, whether it's resellers. So I recognize that this community was enormous and really had to have its own special attention to work on it and improve it. And so I spent years figuring out, actually, the three-legged stool. How could you reduce returns? What can you do to process them faster and better? And what can you do to resell them? And we're proud of the difference we made. At Philips, for example, Philips Consumer Electronics, we were a $2 billion U.S. consumer electronics company running around 10 to 12% return rates. Within 4 years of establishing my department with some key support, we reduced it below 5%.
And that included e-commerce type purchases?
Not as much back then.
Okay.
but it does now. And they've also been successful in keeping return rates down as a manufacturer. A lot of factors to that. But you're correct. Once you come into the e-commerce world, post-pandemic, and the culture, Spencer, the culture hasn't changed. Well, the culture hasn't changed since around turn of the century, 2 centuries ago, when Sears, Montgomery Ward, and J.C. Penney all said, we'll take anything back anytime from anybody. We created this culture in the United States. The e-commerce companies follow that. It's like if they're going to compete with brick and mortar, they have to make it easy for you and I and your wife to buy things and take them back. And they did. They made it easy. They made it free. And now they own another leap forward in the entitlement culture that we have, at least, and not just in this country, frankly, around the world.
That's right. So what is, tangibly, what are some steps that you are seeing logistics companies take to, this is a huge hole. From an expense standpoint. So what do you see them doing to take steps to improve this business function?
Well, by logistics companies, if you're being broad in the sense of the logistics operations of brands being retailers and manufacturers, they're doing everything possible to make it easy to return. They're doing everything possible they're starting to do everything possible to recover from those returns. And you mentioned earlier, Spencer, the facts about returning one piece at a time can be expensive. But when you measure the entire lot of a brand and what its return rates are, you have to measure against the total sales as well. So you can't just be thinking about how much it costs and how expensive it is to take one piece back from a consumer. You have to think about all the sales of that particular product, as well as all the purchases by you or I. And then you create a value proposition. So from the logistics side, again, I like going back and saying that it belongs to the manufacturer first. He has to make products that are good, that people love, and they don't want to take back. And I worked for a few years at Sony. I was always amazed. The return rates were very low because they built the brand up. It's like a Rolex or Michael Kors. Some of these brands, they have such an identity that they don't have high return rates. So you want to do that. So you want to create good products. The second is you want to have good return policies with your retailers and negotiate what will you take back. Should you be taking something back that's 5 years old? Probably not. 3 months old? Absolutely. So you have to work on those kind of policies. And then the logistics aspect of it is, how do you get it back? The big box retailers with their return centers, they will collect returns for you as a brand. They might collect a truck full and send it to you every month. They might collect less than a truck full and send it to you every 2 weeks. So there's a logistics there. But again, that aspect of the logistics, where does it go? What do you do with it? How many touch points can you have? So I'm impressed by logistics providers such as C.H. Robinson, GXO, who not only take this stuff back, and even FedEx and UPS to a degree, but they'll help the manufacturer or the retailer do something with it right then and there and reduce the touch points. There's an example for you.
Yeah. And so whether it's, the 3PLs or the trucking companies, the folks that are raising their hand on the pure transportation, the movement of the goods, what do you observe about those operations? What type of capabilities do they need to have in place to do this not only well, but do this profitably?
I'm not sure that they do it well, but they do it profitably. And I'm referring to a colleague of mine from Walmart. He was head of the returns for 22 years there. And he'd always say in conferences when we talk from the stage together, or I'd be in the audience, he would say, let's face it, Tony, the only people who really make money in the returns industry are the carriers, because they're collecting the same amount, whether it's garbage, whether it's mixed gaylords, whether it's nice packages, they collect the same amount of money. So the carriers don't have a vested interest in trying to improve it a lot unless they understand the flow, that if they get into it, the retailers and manufacturers generally don't want the stuff back. depending on the value proposition. They want a partner that will take it, do something with it for them, and help them create an inventory to resell in the future. So logistics companies are right in the middle, but the carriers are making money. So do they really care about making it easier for Phillips or for the Gap to do something with the returns? Not necessarily. They're happy making money on carrying lots of shipments, and God bless them. They're making a lot more money because returns are a lot bigger these days. So I don't see the carriers as being the touch point to solve this, but logistics providers can take a more involved step in what to do with returns. And I wish they
Yeah. So I guess my follow-up question to that would be, why aren't more folks raising their hand? Because generally what we see and kind of where our worlds intersect is from a value creation strategy. Generally where we see folks exiting on top, generally it's because they have constructed a business model where they're doing difficult things to execute, in many cases that no one else wants, moving products nobody else wants to move, doing it when nobody else wants to do it, and consequently they're able to charge a premium, and they have a moat around what they're doing. And so when you start throwing numbers around like a multi-trillion-dollar industry, like I'm just this is not like a new development. This has been going on and certainly has been escalated year over year for the last, call it 15 years. But I'm just wondering, like, why aren't more people raising their hand to say, I want to get in this market to do these returns and to do them better than anybody else and box everybody else out?
Because it's not easy. Again, go back to that visual I was trying to draw for you, that forward logistics. And by the way, I have a great example because Phillips ran a facility in Columbus, Ohio, and it was forward and reverse. So here's the people who are driving forklifts, who are picking packages to ship forward, building pallets, nice and easy, and then put them on the other side of the building, trying to handle. It's forward thinking versus reverse reality. And reverse reality means you can't even use the same people. You really can't, because operating a forklift for new goods pallets with good cartons is different than moving those Gaylords with potentially valuable products in them, but loose. So you really need a different mindset. Even inside the same warehouse, we eventually put up a fence and separated the forward side of the building from the reverse side. And that made a difference because people think different. You can't do both sides of the brain. So it's not easy. That's why there's not more carriers doing it. Now, some carriers do it in a big way. Again, the GXOs of the world, C.H. Robinson, some of those people, they do it in a big way, but they've spent years learning the hard way, the mistakes that can happen. Again, you're touching the stuff, but then you have to turn it into something that can be recovered, whether it's resold, whether it goes back on the shelf as new. Those are major decisions that have to be made at the point of the return. And are the carriers equipped with the staffing that can do that? Now, AI is coming, Spencer. Let's throw it out there. AI can help do that. It can disposition a Gaylord full of stuff based on UPC, based on photographs, that it knows what the new good looks like. Can it go back as new? So that is coming. Will that enable more carriers and more logistics providers to get into that? Jury's out on that one. But logistics providers on the forward side, they do tackle a lot of problems that you outlined and deal with a lot of issues. But the reverse is, it's like being on a different planet, Spencer. Or it'd be like if you and I were placed in China or Japan and we don't speak the language. How do we get around and do things? It's a challenge of unimagined proportions, and the numbers speak to it, right? So the help's needed. But
I think that's a great distinction about it being an entirely different ball game. Though it might be in the same package, the package has been augmented, and because of that, we're now playing a different game. And so, which you brought up mindset. I haven't been able to get my mind off that label behind your head there, sir. What are we looking at? What are we looking at there?
one of the loves in my life is returns, and returns suck. That's what the label says there. It lights up sometimes, by the way, not today, but some days it lights up. And it's true, because to me, it goes back to the beginning. You know what a return is? It's an unhappy customer. Somebody was unhappy somewhere. And that's the nightmare that the brands don't recognize. Well, they think they do. And they think the only solution is take anything back. I mean, this goes back to the Nordstrom stories of taking anything back at retail, even if they didn't sell it, right? Yeah. The tire story and the urban legend and things like that. So that is the beginning. Returns suck because you lost a customer, or you almost lost a customer, but you made a customer unhappy. And by the way, the other nightmare of e-commerce, I mean, I'm describing what happens in stores. Returns suck. People bring them back, but you can do things with them, put it back on the shelf. But you and I, we're on a two-dimensional experience here right now. I don't know if you're short, you're tall. If I shake your hand, is it big? Is it small? It's a two-dimensional experience. So are purchases bought online. You and I look at a package, and your wife especially, my wife too, you look at a package on the screen, but it comes to your door and you have a certain expectation in your mind already. So you open it up and you look at it and you touch it, and suddenly it doesn't feel anything like what you expected. It doesn't smell like anything you expected. It doesn't work like anything you expected, because you had the expectation set by the computer. By this, I wish it was the computer. A lot of people are doing it on this now, right? So they get this little tiny picture, and they're buying something based on that little tiny picture on this device, the mobile device. And expectations are the nightmare for all brands. You and I have them. They send us something. It doesn't meet it. You and I send it back.
Yeah. I want to shift over here. You recently shared an article about the European Union's new eco-design for sustainable products regulation. Share a little bit of that with our audience. What is it, and what could it mean for the United States?
Well, let's back up a little bit on what the European Union is doing. And by the way, people don't realize the EU is actually about 28 countries representing over 500 million consumers who speak about 40, 50 different languages, but have a common goal of, we don't have as much space as the United States, so we better do something about returns and products. And they've been taking steps for years. Best example, Spencer, is you and I have a phone, and you and I may have in the past had different plugs to plug it into the wall. USB-C was created because of European regulation, saying we don't want customers to have all these multiple cables that don't connect. So that was an intelligent approach to, let's force a universal standard. And once they forced it in Europe, what happens to the rest of the world? We're all using USB-C, which, by the way, was created by Intel. And proud of them. They were on my board. They were a member of the Reverse Logistics Association, and they thought about things like, how do we make it easier for consumers? So now let's move forward. The European Union has also labeled products with digital product passport, so that they can identify the life and the history and the birth of those products. So anything sold in Europe has a digital product passport on it, starting with clothing. And there's other aspects connected to that about punishment for factories who don't do the right thing, and that digital product passport is on it, they'll get fined. Now move forward one more step. So now they're thinking, how do we make the future easier? So the sustainable products regulation is for creating products that are circular, meaning the design is of components that can be reused. The design is for the products that can be refurbished or reset or restarted and resold to a secondary market, and it does perform as well as something new. So that's part of what sustainable products regulation is about. It's about finding ways to use the resources that are already consumed in making these products, the phones, the tablets, and even the apparel. And by the way, it was interesting that they hit apparel first. You wouldn't think of recycling as much with apparel, but they're forcing it. So it is a turning point because the biggest companies in the world are global, right? Whether it's Gap, whether it's Levi, whether it's Dell, whether it's HP, they're global in nature. If they're going to do business in Europe, they have to recognize those regulations. So it's going to force feed the world to have to move forward in a circular thinking versus the linear thinking, which was make, break, throw it away. So really proud of the EU for doing that. And I want everyone to understand they're not a small player in this. 500 million consumers, 28 countries, that's pretty dramatic. So again, the European Union's eco-design, last year at our Reverse Logistics Association conference in Amsterdam, one of the EU delegates was there who helped to draft this last year. So they do have a phased-in approach. They're not slamming every company all at once, but over the next few years, it's coming. Spencer, by the way, it's not all that different than what we do in the United States that consumers don't even think about. If you go get a new set of tires, you pay a tire disposal fee. That money goes to a state or the government, and they're supposed to use it to sustainably or responsibly get rid of the tires. It happens on oil. It happens on mattresses in some states. They don't want mattresses in landfills anymore. So it's simply Europe codifying an entire world of regulation rather than just being state by state or country by country. They're trying to design it so that the world pays attention and grateful to that. That's a more important aspect of returns management. We're trying to focus on how do we improve reverse logistics, but that's an important aspect. And eventually, if it reduces returns, it improves reverse logistics.
Interesting.
Sorry, I got carried away on that one. I'm a bit of a
no. I think it's fascinating, and so that I think what I had in my notes here is July 19th is a relevant date for that 2026. Is that right?
For that one, also July 1st was a relevant regulation because they have ordered no manufacturer or retailer can throw clothing away anymore. As of July 1st, you cannot throw it into landfills. And that digital product passcode, it's a QR code. Let me make it simple. That QR code, if it's on a product and it winds up in a landfill, you're going to get hit.
So if it doesn't go to a landfill, and I think that part of this, my understanding around this, Tony, is that because they don't decompose, right? I think that's the issue.
Fast fashion, Spencer, correct. It doesn't really, it's chemicals. And
so honestly, this is a big deal. My wife is, I wouldn't call her an environmentalist, but she is very much into fashion. And so I think she's learned about some of these elements of the impact of the fact that none of this stuff on the returns, they do go into a landfill, and that does have some problems that come along with it. If they don't go into a landfill, what happens to them?
Okay, so there's a lot of things related to that. And by the way, I want to applaud your wife for paying attention. Let me also mention that companies like Patagonia, North Face, Columbia are now offering pre-loved clothing as an option. So they'll take your old stuff back and they'll offer it back, or they will do something responsibly with it. What happens? Unfortunately, in addition to landfill, there's you can Google search photographs from space and from high up of clothing mountains in the desert in Chile. And that's disturbing to me, and it should be disturbing to anyone. So that's where some of it's gone. In the future, materials that can be recycled, cotton, wool, can be recycled so that it stimulates factories to be built that can do this recycling. And you can't recycle chemical clothing. That's why it also will force manufacturers to look at how the clothing is being made. If they can't send it to landfill in the future, they need to look at the materials that they're using so that they can be recycled. And there is a lot of that going on in Europe right now, not in the US too much. But then I think about a company like ThreadUp, it's called, and they take your garments back and they resell them and they give you a revenue share if they get it. And they went through 22 million garments in the United States alone last year that they put back on the web for people to buy. So those are solutions that are there besides throwing it away. It's there.
Interesting. All right, I'm going to transition, Tony, a little bit. Next week, I'll be leading an M&A and investment panel at an organization. It's the National Home Delivery Association.
Yes.
The final mile forum. I've got an all-star lineup to talk about investing in the big and bulky final mile space. And this is ePartners, this is Red Dog Equity, this is Greenbrier, all the heavy hitters that have existing investments in this space. And I want to get your input on this because I think you have an interesting vantage point. The final mile space attracts a lot of investment attention because of its complexity, because of the fragmentation, and because the stakes are big. If you can solve these problems, you're rewarded for it, but extremely difficult. But you mentioned disposal. That's a huge, as investors look at the companies we've represented and sold several of them, the more kind of efficient that the delivery services were in terms of capturing multiple streams of revenue, whether it's the delivery itself, whether it's the disposal, whether it's kind of a reverse logistics. Those are the ones that were capturing the most attention from an investment standpoint. So I guess my question to you is, what advice would you give to other existing final mile delivery services that want to create more value in their businesses that don't have a reverse logistics component? What advice would you give to them?
Well, Spencer, I get to cheat a little bit because I was with Bill Likos and the National Home Delivery Association folks in January at their leadership summit. I was on stage with Eric Olson from ShareTown. And we were presenting, here's the picture of what's going on, especially for big and bulky. So the M&A people should be looking at this universe of returns and saying, wow, we should put some companies together to provide an end-to-end solution. And the National Home Delivery, the big and bulky people, they've got a nightmare because imagine that they carry an appliance or furniture, it gets scratched, it gets bent, it gets dropped, dinged, anything like that. They have a nightmare taking it back. Mm-hmm. And the consumer has been taught, oh, I'm not accepting that anymore. Instead of saying, could I give you a credit for that? Because the credits are easy to calculate. How much is it going to cost to take back that big sofa and put it in a warehouse, let it get dirty, and then figure out what to do with it next? So there's easy calculations here for M&A people to figure out. So there's solutions for big and bulky because I personally believe the forward big and bulky delivery folks should not have to deal with the return side. And that's what we presented to them in January. You should have partners. And that's what the universe of returns has to be about, partnerships. And M&A people can help bring those partnerships together. So the big and bulky people who deliver partner with ShareTown, which is a network of 2,500 representatives who will pick up a washer, a dryer, a dresser, a furniture, a fitness device, bicycle, stationary things, and pick them up and find a way to liquidate, sell them, and do a revenue share back with the manufacturer. Incredible concept, business concept. And so that's what we need. We need more unique, great ideas because the big and bulky people, are you kidding? If it drops slightly off of the truck, all those nightmares for those folks, there are good solutions out there and the M&A people should be financing them and figure out ways of bringing those people together.
That's a good word right there. So two more questions. One of those would be a little bit of a wild card. Predictions. We talked about this development in the EU. 5 years from now, what will be different about the world of reverse logistics than it is today?
I love talking about what's coming because 10 years ago, I didn't see a lot of solutions out there. And I'm so proud now. And that's part of what my company is about. My own personal company now is RL Solutions Group. And my goal is to expose new technologies, new ideas, new best practices that will either help reduce returns, figure out what to do with them, or get more money for them. So all of that is coming and is happening. Example number one, Return Pro, one of our major players in the industry, has created a device called Clarity Just imagine an airport X-ray scanner that can fit on a Walmart desk at the return space behind, and it puts through a set of earbuds from Apple that are $300 and can tell you if they are real or if they're fake. So it cuts the fraud down, and there's an unbelievable amount of that. So one, we want legitimate returns. Number two, when they go into a big box retailer center, we want immediate dispositioning. That's the key. What are we going to do with this? We're not smart enough. And you and I, Spencer, we might look at the return of a certain garment, Levi jeans. You might say, oh, this looks new. I might see the crease in it or the stain in it or the way it smells and say, no, that can't go back as new. That's what AI can do. It can look at the picture of the product, compare it internally to what it should look like new from different angles, and say, okay, this is new. We give full credit, put it back into inventory. This is not new. Put it into the secondary market. This is garbage. This has been scraped and scratched and torn and ripped and beaten up. We have to do something else with it. AI has to start making those decisions for us. And by the way, the tie-in with AI is it can also read the world marketplace. So where is that pair of jeans or that Donacron jacket or the purse or the Rolex or anything, and say the highest recovery for this is on Poshmark or The Real or eBay or Amazon Renewed Market. So AI can do all that. We can't. Our brains aren't big enough to figure all that out. So that's where it's coming. And then other things connected to the phone. In the future, you will be asked questions before returning a device. They'll make sure that offer you options like they did for your wife, where they said, just keep it. That's a bad option, but there's really cool options. I know there's really cool options, Spencer, like, you know what? We'll credit you, but would you take it to the Humane Society because it's pet supplies? Things like that. And the phone can also be used to take a picture of the product and know if it's a real return or if artificial intelligence has created a picture for this person trying to do the return and they're trying to fake a return. We're trying to eliminate fraud. We're trying to maximize the value in the dispositioning. And that's what it's all about, Spencer, the dispositioning. By the way, the branded manufacturers like Philips, Dell, HP, they want everything back. Now the value is higher, but they want everything back to protect their brand name as well. And that doesn't just apply to electronics, which have a law that says if you've ever plugged it in, it can no longer be sold as new. Garments don't have that law. And you can't tell, really. You know, somebody buys the prom dress. I'm sure this may have happened once or twice and returns it after they wear it. You know, that's kind of tricky to police. But electronics, you can police. So I threw out a lot of stuff there, Spencer.
Well, I mean, I think we got a lot of exciting things coming ahead.
We do.
Last question, a little bit of a wild card, Tony. Offline, you told me you retired 8 years ago. I don't think you know what retirement is. So, so my question to you is, most of our clients, you know, upon exiting, they do expect to retire. So my question is, what is one adventure? Maybe it's a travel, maybe it's an experience. What's something that you could pass along to my clients that are looking forward to a real retirement? What do you think that they should be doing? What's an experience that they must go out into the world and experience?
Spencer, as in most things in life, it's hard for me to focus on just one, but I'll go with just two. Number one, travel-wise, the experience I had visiting Singapore for a conference was incredible. It is the cleanest city in the world with the easiest public transportation to use and amazing things like a $2-3 billion investment in their botanical gardens, and a beautiful, amazing city. So travel-wise, number one. Number two, if you enjoy music and food, the New Orleans Jazz Heritage Festival, I've been going for over 25 years, is the best music festival in the world with 12 stages of different kinds of music and 100,000 people of your favorite friends. And it's an incredible experience. So the fortunate part, Spencer, for me is I didn't retire, but I get to keep doing those, usually tied in with events. So when you can mix life and retirement and working together, it's Thanks for the wild card question. I enjoyed that, Spencer.
Well, and I've enjoyed all of the insights in the conversation. I think our audience is really going to eat this up. And so thank you for what you have done, what you continue to do to educate and create opportunities in the reverse logistics space. That's going to do it for us here in the hot seat, sir. We will see you next time.